Hello everyone and welcome to the class. David A. Cox here with PCClassesOnline.com. Today we are talking all about the built-in camera app that comes with your iPhone. Now granted, most of what I cover today is all valid on the iPad as well, but today we're doing this especially for you iPhone users out there. We're going to go over a bunch of little tips and tricks for you, and then at the very end I'm going to give you some of my absolute favorite accessories for those of you out there who want to really kick this into high gear. Make sure you have the best case for shooting photos and a few other accessories as well. So the first thing I want to go over is a general rule in photography. It is always best to shoot, whether you're doing photo or video, in landscape mode. You can always crop it later on, but photos and videos always look best if you shoot them like this. The other trick I want to give you is, while it might be tempting to hit that little white button that you see on the right side of the screen, which is of course your on-screen shutter button, it's actually better to use the volume plus button. Yep, you might not have known it, but the volume plus button also acts as a shutter, and that's of course on both devices. So instead of using that on-screen button, use the volume plus button. You'll get a better, more stable shot. The next trick I want to show you is something you may or may not have known, but if you're on the lock screen of your phone and you see something and you really want to take a photo quickly, instead of having to slide to unlock, putting in your passcode, putting in your fingerprint, you may have never noticed this, but there's actually a little camera icon at the very bottom right corner. And if you slide with one finger up from there, it'll go straight into the camera app. So if you see something that you want to capture quickly, that is the best way to do it. So now let's start to discuss what the various buttons do here. The one at the very top left is to switch back and forth between cameras, so the back-facing or the front-facing camera. The next one is a timer, but it's for a photo burst. So you can either have this off, which is what most people do. You can have it shoot after 3 seconds or after 10 seconds. And when you do that, it's going to shoot 11 photos really quickly. So what will happen is when you're done shooting them, you're going to be able to go into it and select which photo you like best. Now, the iPhone is going to automatically try to figure out which is the best one and present that to you first, but you can manually go through, flip through these, find the one you want, and then you can either keep just that one photo or however many you select and delete the rest, or you can keep them all. The next button is for HDR, and HDR stands for High Dynamic Range. It's hard for me to demonstrate this for you, but high dynamic range is when you have two different lighting conditions coming together. For example, let's say you're shooting a sunset. Your foreground might be a little bit dark, but your background would be very, very light. So what would happen is it takes basically two photos and blends them together to meet the best of both worlds. Finally, here at the bottom left, you'll see you have your flash indicator. So this is either on, off, or auto. I want to give you a tip about using this at night. So if you've ever taken a photo at night and found that it's sort of like, this is very hard to describe, but there's almost like a white ghost-like effect over your images. I couldn't find any to give you as a demonstration. It is usually an indication that you could possibly use a better phone case. If you look at the back of your iPhone case where the camera is, some cases have this little lip that comes out, and for some of them it's a little bit too far or at an angle. And what can happen is when you shoot the flash, it'll refract back into the lens, causing this, again, sort of like a white ghost-like image. So if you need a new iPhone case, I'm going to actually show you which one I use. There's a link to it in the description of this video. It's under $10, and it's kind of a great hybrid case as far as gives you great protection, and it's also very, very slim, so check that out. Next, I want to talk about some of these filters that come with the iPhone camera app. So let's go into that right here. It's these three little circles that you see in my case at the top right corner. And it'll give you an instant preview of what it will look like. These are different filters to age the look of your photo or video. They're very, very cool. Personally, my favorite two are Chrome, which is awesome if you're shooting foliage or a sunset, really anything where you want those colors to really, really pop. And the other is Noir, which is, well, kind of speaks for itself, but it's a very, very cool effect, I find. So if you tap on one of them, it'll go into it, and now you're shooting with that effect. The one thing you should know is that if you don't turn it off, the next time you come back to your camera app, it's going to still have that same filter on it. So when you're done, you might want to consider switching it back to none. The next feature I want to talk about is the ability to zoom in or out of a photo or video. And to do this, you simply pinch your fingers together or apart, depending on if you're zooming in or out, and it will do so. The word of warning about this is you are essentially distorting your image. And if you're especially shooting a photo, keep in mind the camera is good enough that you can just crop it later on. So I usually don't tend to recommend doing this, but you can do it. The other thing you can do is tap on a different part of the image and it will rack focus. So if you tap on the background, suddenly the background will become in focus, the foreground will go out of focus, and vice versa. You can also change the exposure levels by simply dragging up or down with your finger. On that note, a little tip for you. If you're ever, let's say, at a concert, you may have seen people post videos and photos from concerts and they look all blown out. You can't really see people. They're just kind of this, white, blur in the middle of darkness. Usually the reason for that is people don't change the exposure. So if you're at that kind of a venue where it's a concert or a theater production and you're going to take a photo or video, it's a good idea to lower the exposure. That way correctly adapts to the image. Next thing I want to talk about are the various shooting modes, and this can be a little bit confusing because the gesture to switch back and forth between shooting modes is very, very similar to changing the exposure. So what I find is there's this like sweet spot zone right here, and if you swipe with your finger up and down, it'll switch back and forth between these various modes. So let's go through them one at a time. Photo, I think that kind of speaks for itself. If you swipe down from here, it'll go into square mode. So it's the exact same thing as a photo, it's just square. Next we have panorama. Very, very cool. Now this will work either horizontally or vertically. Typically a lot of people tend to use this horizontally. There's very few things that photograph well vertically. Maybe the Eiffel Tower might be an exception to the rule. But with this, what you're going to do is kind of start your phone pointed towards the left. And then what you're going to do is you're going to hit the on-screen shutter button. You do have to use the on-screen one for this one. And then you're going to slowly rotate your phone, and you want to keep it as steady as possible. And it might give you kind of little directions to slow down or kind of adjust your grip a little bit. And when you're done, hit stop. And it's going to stitch it into a panorama. Here's just a couple of shots that I've shot with nothing more than my iPhone. It's a really fantastic app, just purely for that. In the past, if you remember back early days of the iPhone, you had to use all these special apps to try to stitch it together, and none of them really did it that well. With this, it tends to do a really good job. So if you keep swiping down, you eventually come to video mode. Simply hit the red button in order to record. In this case, the flash button just becomes a light. Now I want to give you a trick if you have an issue, which is very, very common, where if you're shooting video, it'll constantly be refocusing. It can be very, very distracting, especially if you're trying to shoot something that's, semi-professional looking. There is another app that does, in my opinion, a slightly better job at shooting video. It's called Film Mic Pro. It's a little bit more tricky to use, but it will lock down that feature so it won't constantly be refocusing throughout the whole video shoot. Swipe down again and you get to slow-mo mode. And with this, it's actually shooting at a higher frame rate. So it's shooting at 240 frames per second. And this is great for filming fast action shots like skateboard or something like that. And what it will do is when you're done, it's going to try to figure out what part you would want it to slow down the subject. But what's cool is you can actually go into post and you can tell it exactly which parts you want to slow down. Swipe again, and we get to what is my personal favorite feature within the camera app, which is time-lapse mode. Now, if you're serious about shooting time-lapse and it just looks amazing, there is an accessory that you absolutely have to get for your phone. It's really inexpensive, and it's just well built, frankly. It's a little tripod adapter, and it just goes onto your normal tripod that you would have for your normal DSLR camera, and it works with pretty much every smartphone out there. So even if you have maybe a slightly older iPhone, or if you have a 6 Plus, it doesn't matter the size, it's readjustable. And with this, you're just going to kind of lock it down, hit that red button, and it's just going to automatically be taking photos, and it's going to turn it into time-lapse photography. With this, it is so easy. You just hit that red button, let it do its thing. You really kind of need to shoot for a while. And I tend to think that the best types of subjects to film in time-lapse mode, it's really great if you have clouds in the background. You don't want a perfectly clear blue day. It looks really great if it's partially cloudy or even maybe a little more than partially cloudy. One time I actually got on CNN for shooting a hurricane while shooting in time-lapse photography. It was a pretty cool feature. And you can do it right here from your phone. Here's a couple shots I've shot over the last few weeks and months. Very, very cool feature. I think you'll agree. All right, folks, a couple quick products here to show off to you. You'll find links to all of these, of course, in the description of the video. If you're looking for a really nice lens to add onto your phone, yes, you can do it. Check out this one. It's $49 or so. You can find it on Amazon. It works with every iPhone from the 5, the original 5, through the 6 Plus. You'll find that there. Next one we have here is for those of you who are constantly running out of juice, or those of you who travel a lot, we have the Solove Power Pack. It's got a 10,000 mAh charge. It's really slick and slim. Has 2 USB ports. You can actually charge 2 devices at once, not just your iPhone, but also potentially an iPad, Android devices, Kindle Fire, something like that. Next one we have here is, this is the case I was mentioning earlier that I use. I love it. It's called the iFace. It's really well built, and it's under $10. Next one we have here is the solar charger, and these come in different sizes, but it's basically a solar panel, and you have a little slip here. You can put your phone into it. You can charge, again, 2 devices at once. You just let it sit in the sun. It's definitely a great accessory for those of you who enjoy going to the beach or enjoy camping, that kind of thing. Well, folks, that about does it for today. Thanks for joining us here. We'll see you next time. This is David A. Cox with PCClassesOnline.com. Class dismissed.